What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's some of my final thoughts ahead of the Game Week 28 deadline. So I'm going to go through the latest press conference information, discuss some of your benching headaches, answer your questions, and take a quick look at my own team as well. There's a lot to get through, so let's get straight into it. So let's start with the Liverpool press conference. As you might expect, Arne Slot hinted at rotation. This is most of what he had to say. If I make the choice to play other players, that is because I think that's the biggest chance to win the game tomorrow against Southampton, and not because I want to rest them for the game against PSG. So the only way I make changes is because maybe it's only 2 days in between, and then I might feel that playing someone else is a better option because we have many players that are of equal quality. You could argue, by the way, that no attacker in that squad is anywhere near the quality of Salah, therefore he definitely starts, but I'll come on to that in a minute. But that then only has to do with us getting a bigger chance of winning the game against Southampton than it has anything to do with the PSG game. He went on to say, the most important game is the one against Southampton. If there were 3, 4, 5 days in between the last game and this one, I'd probably start the same 11 again. But since there's only 2 days in between and we had to fight really hard, so you take that into account. Now, managers say lots of things in press conference. Let's be real, he's going to rotate because it's Southampton, right? He just couldn't come out and say that. The key question is, who's going to get rotated? And by the way, he also confirmed that Cody Gakpo is a doubt. So I really don't think he's going to start against Southampton. So if you've got him, he's a sell. And I talked about forward replacements in the transfer tips video earlier this week. I think that Alisson is under some threat. Only a small amount, though. If I had Alisson, I would just play him and not panic about it too much. But I think Kelleher could possibly come in. Alisson has picked up the odd knock before, so maybe they just go super safe there. But if I had Alisson, I would play him. I definitely wouldn't buy him. I think Quansah will start. The only question is, will it be right back or centre back for Trent or Konate? Maybe this is pure copium because I've got Trent in my squad and I'm hoping that he starts. But to me, it would make more sense to give Konate a rest because in the past, he's not had the greatest injury record. But also, Trent has had a few knocks already this season. So it's difficult to know who might play. It could even be Quansah right back and Endo centre back. Like, that is a possibility. I'm not sure that is something that Slot will do, but it's possible. So I think Trent is a risk. I wouldn't buy him for sure. If I had him, though, I think you've got to start him. And I think it's the same with Konate because the upside is there. And with Konate in particular, if you've got a good bench option, I don't think he would come on if he doesn't start. Trent probably would. But I think if he does start, there's so much potential for points there. You've got to play him. And there is a chance he'll get subbed off before the 60th minute. But again, I think that risk is worth taking. With Szoboszlai, in the press conference, Slot also mentioned Harvey Elliott not getting the game time that he deserves right now. Again, managers say a lot of things in the press conference. He's got to try and keep all his players happy. But he did say that Elliott is competing with Szoboszlai and Salah. So it seems quite likely that he will come in for one of those players. Therefore, I wouldn't buy Szoboszlai. I think Darwin will start. Like, I'd almost put that at like a 90% chance. He'll be the number 9. I think Salah's going to start on the right. And then on the left, I'm not sure with the Gakpo situation. Will he just play Diaz again? Will he go for some other formation, which he's done recently, where he's only played 2 of Salah, Jota, Diaz, etc.? Not 100% sure. I'd be really careful about buying Liverpool players this week. With Salah, I think he'll start. I don't know what percentage guarantee I would put on that. And he could definitely get subbed early this week. I'm tempted to move the armband to Palmer, who played in Europe last night, but only for about 70 minutes. I think he's guaranteed to start against Leicester, and his minutes will be pretty good. So I'm a little bit tempted to do that. But as it stands, I think the same as the other day. Salah will start. Therefore, he's a really good captaincy this week. He could easily get subbed early. If you're concerned about that, put the captain's armband elsewhere. But also, he could do really well in 60, 65 minutes and come away with a big score. So I think Trent and Salah are going to start. I suspect Alisson will as well. I think Konate is at more of a risk than Trent. I think Van Dijk definitely starts. I suspect Tsimikas will come in at left back and Darwin Núñez will play number 9. I think that's pretty much everything covered from an FPL point of view. So there's good news from Newcastle about Alexander Isak. Eddie Howe said he's fine. On Sunday, he was feeling a bit fatigued. He's been training every day. He's good. So presumably he's in line for a start against West Ham away. Callum Wilson is fit at the moment, so he could take minutes off of Isak. But if I had to predict it, I would say he's going to be in that 11. Is there a chance he's benched and saved for the Carabao Cup final? Absolutely. But if you've got him, based on what we know right now, I think you've got to start him. West Ham away is a decent fixture. He's capable of big points in that. You've got to play him. Would I buy him at the moment? No, I would just leave that until game week 30 onwards now. but if you've got him, you play him. On Botman, Eddie Howe said, Sven, we have been trying to get him back to full fitness. He was very close to the Brighton game, but the day before he felt something again in his knee. This week he had the same discomfort, so it looks like he will have to have an operation. He needs a small operation to clear out some fluid, and then he should be fine again. We hope he should be back in about 8 weeks. That guy is not having a great time right now. Hopefully this fixes it, because I think he's a really good player and Newcastle need him. From an FPL point of view, this makes Dan Burn at 4.4 and Livramento at 4.5 pretty nailed, you would think. So if you're looking to switch Lewis Hall to a different Newcastle defender, I would look at one of those two, and they should still be good from game week 30 onwards. So there's another £50 Amazon voucher up for grabs this week. All you have to do is join the Let's Talk FPL Premier League Pick'em League over on Sleeper, which is completely free to do. And if you haven't done it already, there's a link in the description below, or you can scan the QR code on screen. And you've just got to put your football knowledge to use to predict what's going to happen in this weekend's game. So I'm just going to go through my predictions now to show you how quick and easy it is to do. I'm actually going to go for a Man City away win against Nottingham Forest. Forest have defended well, but that Man City attack is still difficult to deal with. So I'm going to go for a City win. Brighton to win at home to Fulham, even though Fulham have been strong this season. And Crystal Palace definitely to beat Ipswich, even without Mateta. Liverpool to beat Southampton is pretty straightforward. Brentford versus Villa is another difficult game to call. Villa have got Champions League either side of this game, so I'm going to go for a Brentford home win. Wolves to beat Everton. Actually, do you know what? I'm going to go for a draw there, because I think Everton defensively are not that bad, and Wolves are going to be without Cunha. So that's going to be the draw that I go for. Chelsea to beat Leicester. Spurs Bournemouth. That's going to be quite close. Spurs loss in Europe. Bournemouth are strong. I'm going to go for another draw there, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a Bournemouth away win. Man United Arsenal. I always back Man United, but I don't think I can do it. I'm going to go for a draw, but even that's just pure hope. I think Arsenal will probably win that game. And then Newcastle, I'm going to predict Isak to start. Therefore, I'm going to go for them to beat West Ham away. That's all you have to do. It's completely free. Just scan that QR code on screen. Use the link in the description below. Join the Let's Talk FPL League. Whoever gets the most predictions correct for Game Week 28 will get that £50 Amazon voucher. If there's a tie where more than one person has the same number of correct predictions, I'll do a random draw on the next deadline stream. So for anyone that either has Mitoma in their squad already or is thinking about buying him, it's good news. Fabian Hurtzler confirmed that last weekend it was just cramp and that he's available for Fulham at home in Game Week 28. He also confirmed there's no other new injury worries at the moment. So with Mitoma, he looks like a pretty good option if you want to target that Brighton attack. I wouldn't say he's as nailed as like a Bruno Fernandes, but he's probably about as close to that as you're going to get in that team. And he seems pretty good minutes-wise. Like Ruta, João Pedro, Welbeck, Minter, they all could be pretty good, but none of them are as good as Mitoma. So if you really want an attacker from Brighton, Fulham at home this week, followed by City away in the blank, Villa at home in 30, Palace away in 31, Mitoma's the one to look at. With João Pedro, I'm going to talk about him on benching headaches later on. I would probably predict him to start, but I would say it's not a guarantee, because they could play Minter on the right, Mitoma on the left, Ruta 10, and then Welbeck up front. I think João Pedro's done okay recently, so he could well be in the 11, but it's definitely not a guarantee. So Glasner spoke about Mateta in the Crystal Palace press conference today. This is what he said. Mateta is doing well. He is at home and recovering well. He had no fractures or concussions, so this is all really good news. Healing from the huge wound is going as we expected. He will go to Marbella with us next week and train individually. If all goes to plan, he will be available versus Fulham. So he's definitely going to miss Ipswich at home in Game Week 28. Palace are hoping that he's back for Fulham in the FA Cup, and that match is a couple of days before the Game Week 30 deadline. So I guess there is a chance that he might not be available for Fulham, and then if he isn't, he may well miss Southampton in Game Week 30 as well. But if that's what they're hoping for, we've got to assume that's probably when he's going to be back. So this is what I would say. No one should be buying him right now. If you've got him and you're free hit 29, I would try and keep hold of him if you can. Because obviously having Southampton away, Brighton at home, then a double in 32 is part of the reason to free hit 29, because you've got Crystal Palace players. So in that case, I'd try and keep hold of him. If your team's in a bit of a mess and you're still free hit 29, you could sell him, but I wouldn't do it unless you absolutely have to. And if you're not free hit 29 and you've got him, he's probably more of a sell. If you're in the luxury where your squad is perfect apart from Mateta, you could just hold him on the bench if that was your original plan. But basically, he's not going to play for the next 2 game weeks. And I know he's got that Southampton game in 30, but there are points to be had before that. So hopefully back for game week 30. Not a guarantee, but it all sounds quite positive at the moment. I'm not sure this is a big update for many people, but I know some of you have kept Sepp van den Berg in your squad for a while now, and Thomas Frank confirmed that he'll be back in training next week. So it's possible he could play some part against Bournemouth away in game week 29. Can I guarantee he's going to start? Absolutely not. It seems more likely that he would be on the bench and then make a cameo appearance. But it's possible you're going to get some points out of him in 29. This shouldn't really affect too many people's plans. The fixture run is not good for Brentford from a defensive point of view. I definitely wouldn't be buying a defender right now. But if you've got him and you didn't want to take a hit to get a different player in, maybe you can just put him in your 11 and hope for the best. In 29, of course. So David Moyes for Everton confirmed today that McNeil, Njai and Calvert-Lewin all fall into forward players that they need back, but went on to say that he doesn't think that any of those three at the moment are really close. So if you're thinking about buying Beto, who's only 5.1 million, Wolves away this week, West Ham at home in 29, he's definitely going to continue to start. The minutes should be good, and he's probably on penalties as well. So he looks like a good value option. As I've said before, if you're looking to play him past game week 29, it's Liverpool away in 30, Arsenal at home in 31, which is not ideal, but it's also not the end of the world. If you had to play him in those two fixtures, when he's only taking up 5.1 million of your budget, that's probably okay. So if you're really stuck for cash, I like him. I think for a little bit more money, you can get Strand Larsen, who has slightly better fixtures, but no guarantee he does better. So for benching headaches this week, I did consider putting Isak a little bit further down the list, just for that slight chance that he's benched and safe for the Carabao Cup final. But I'm going to predict to start, and for that reason, I've put him right at the top. If you're less confident about him starting, then of course moving down a little bit. In second place, I've gone for Mbeumo ahead of Watkins. That's really just because Mbeumo's at home, guaranteed to be on penalties as well. Then I've gone for Kluivert and Semenyo. I still think Spurs away is a good fixture. Bournemouth, very strong attack. And they should both start as well. Semenyo, definitely. Then João Pedro. I toyed with putting him a little bit further down. I think Fulham at home's not bad. We know he's on penalties when he plays. There's a slight risk of a benching there. That's my only hesitation with him. But again, I'm going to predict a start. Therefore, he's where he is on the list. Then I've gone for Marmoush ahead of both Chris Wood and Bruno Fernandes. I've got to be honest, if I had those three players, I'm not completely convinced that I would play Marmoush ahead of both of them, considering Wood and Fernandes are definitely on penalties. But I think Chris Wood against Man City at home is going to be tough enough. And Fernandes has got Arsenal. Marmoush away to Forest. I mean, based on how they've defended this year, you could argue that Marmoush has got the harder fixture than Chris Wood. And if you wanted to play Wood instead, I ain't going to argue with you, right? It's all quite close in terms of how you call it. But Marmoush could do well, I think. Then I've gone for, then Wood, then Fernandes, then Rodgers ahead of Wanyeri, just because I think Rodgers starts, better fixture as well. Although, honestly, Wanyeri against Man United away is probably just as easy as Brentford away at this point. I think Wanyeri has to start again. So you could flip that. And obviously, Rodgers has got Champions League. Well, so does Wanyeri. Yeah, I'm going to keep it like that. Rodgers, then Wanyeri. There's not much in it. I've put Ouattara below all those players I've already mentioned. Again, just for that slight risk that he could be benched. If he does play, he's probably ahead of a lot of those players, but I just put him further down. I'm more confident that João Pedro will start than Ouattara. I'm not sure if I should be that confident about that, but that's where I'm at right now. Then Gabriel, Man United away, ahead of Aït-Nouri against Everton at home. You could flip them, but Arsenal defence is so much better than Wolves. That's why I've played Gabriel. And by the way, some people asked me to put, I think, Munoz on this list. I'm not even going to entertain that. He's got Ipswich at home. You absolutely play him. You could even make an argument to play Munoz ahead of Trent for guaranteed minutes. He should not be on this list. You should not be thinking about benching him. Gabriel, Aït-Nouri, then Mikalenko, then Aina, ahead of Robinson. Another one I'm not completely sure about. Man City on paper is obviously tougher, but Forest are at home, whereas Fulham are away. So that's why I've gone for Aina. And then goalkeepers, I've gone for Verbruggen ahead of Flecken because Brighton defence is just a bit stronger. So let's get into some of your questions. Should I go for Game Week 29 wildcard that sets me up perfectly for everything, or a -8 in Game Week 29? Now, if you're confident that wildcard sets you up for everything, I don't see why you wouldn't do it. You save 8 points straight away. You get a really nice squad for the blank in 29, and then you've got everything set up after that. I think it's difficult, though, to say that it definitely sets you up perfectly, because you don't have the FA Cup quarter-final results. You can definitely hedge your bets by picking some players from certain teams, some players from the other team. Whoever gets through, you've got at least some players that are going to double. But But I think if you can get through 29 with just a -4 or just a -8, I'd much prefer to get that information and wildcard afterwards. So I don't want to put anyone off wildcarding in 28 or 29. I think there are benefits, right? My team could almost use a wildcard, to be honest with you, but I'd much rather get that information and just have the rest of the season pretty much set out. We still won't know kind of 35, 36, 37, but we'll have a much better indication by the time we get to the 30 or 31 deadline. So go for it if you think it's perfect. But for most people, I'd try and delay it if you can. So in game week 30, my bench will look like this. Jose Sarr versus West Ham at home, Ouattara and Haaland versus Ipswich at home, and any 4.3 million defender. Do you think it's worth bench boosting, meaning I can wildcard 31 and put all my money into the starting 11 and not worry about having to plan the bench boost? So general thoughts on this, not necessarily specific to your bench. If you get a good bench over the next couple of weeks that is genuinely great before you wildcard, I would be tempted to activate the bench boost. My plan, for example, is to wildcard in 30 or 31 and bench boost in the double in 33. That bench might not look that good, and it's very unlikely that I'll have a full bench of double game week players anyway. And if it doesn't look good, or I want a free hit in 33, the fallback plan is to bench boost in 32 instead. But again, it's not going to have a bench full of double game week players. So if you get a decent single game week bench, absolutely go ahead and activate it. And then when you wildcard, there's less things to worry about. I will say though, I think people over-exaggerate how much of a pain planning for the bench boost is on wildcard. I really don't think it's that big of a deal, or at least it shouldn't be. So if you don't have a good bench, just wait. Wildcard, set yourself up for a decent bench in one of the following weeks. That should be absolutely fine. For your specific bench, Ouattara, possibly a minute's risk. You'll have much more information by the time you get to game week 30 about whether he's still starting. And 4.3 million defenders are not that great. You're probably looking to double up on Wolves, like someone like Matt Doherty, for example, who's 4.3. Not an issue, but just trying to set expectations. So if you get a good bench before wildcard and you want to use the bench boost, absolutely, I'm all for that. But I really don't think it's that big of a deal to plan for it after wildcard. So if your bench doesn't look great, just leave it. So how do you plan to get Haaland into your team for game week 29? Now, I might talk about my team a little bit later, but as it stands, I'm hoping to roll a transfer in 28. That will give me 2 free transfers in 29. Now, the easiest way to do it, and to do it for free, would be to sell Salah. So do something like Salah and Watkins to Semenyo and Haaland. Semenyo would have Brentford at home in 29, Ipswich at home in 30, then potential wildcard in 31. Haaland would have Brighton at home, I'd captain him, then Leicester at home in 30, and I'd probably captain him for that as well. Now, do I really want to sell Salah? No. I would lose team value. I might want him back on wildcard as well, but I would hope that I would get enough points in the meantime that that wouldn't matter as much. For anyone that's asking, why would you not just sell Palmer instead? I'm not really in that luxury position where I can sell players that have got a fixture. I might decide to do that just to get the captaincy on Haaland, but I don't really want to sell Palmer unless I absolutely have to. I will also say, because of the FA Cup draw and the fact that I might now free hit in 33, depending on how the quarterfinals go, I'm less convinced by selling Salah because I think there's more chance of me wanting him on wildcard. The idea would be, by the way, Haaland captain 29 and 30. 31 you go for someone that's not Salah. 32 is a double for Newcastle, so you probably go Isak. And then 33, Liverpool won't double, so again, I won't go for Salah that week anyway. That's the reason to get rid of him. Hopefully then Liverpool are still in the Champions League, they've won the league and Salah gets rotated more. I just don't know if I want to take that risk. So that's the Salah route. The other option for a -4 would be to do Watkins, Isak and Cunha. So basically selling all my forwards to Haaland, Strand Larsen and Beto. That's the only way I can afford it, is to get 2 cheap forwards like that. The problem is, Beto's got bad fixtures in game week 30, so I don't necessarily want to buy him unless I absolutely have to. But that's a -4 route. Or there's a -8, which would be Watkins, Isak, Cunha and Trent. And I'd sell Trent to have more money, basically, to Haaland, still Strand Larsen, just because it's Southampton in 29. So despite Wolves being a bit weaker without Cunha, that's still a great fixture. And then they got a decent fixture in 30. It is West Ham at home, I think. I'm just double checking. Yeah, West Ham at home. And then Chris Wood. So Chris Wood's probably better than Beto, especially when he's got Ipswich away in 29. And then a 5.3 million defender. That would probably be 8 Nori. Do I really want to take a -8? No. but my team is in a pretty bad way. The other option is just to not get Haaland, and I might do that, but I really want to leave these decisions until 29. That's why I want to roll this week if I can. Any scenario where I don't sell Trent leaves me having to play Greaves versus Forest at home or Anderson versus Spurs at home. Obviously, I could sell one of those two players instead, but that still requires a -4. So ideally, I want to sell Trent, but Cunha getting that suspension has kind of screwed me over. Because had he not had that, I could have just sold Trent, Isak and Watkins, not bought Chris Wood, only taken the -4 and still got Haaland. So that Cunha suspension is just super frustrating, but what can I do about it? Or I can only adapt. So that's the plan. I'm much less likely to sell Salah than I was maybe a week or two ago. So it's probably the -4 or -8 option. So what are your thoughts on Evanilson in for Mateta? Generally, I think Bournemouth attackers are still really good over the next 3 game weeks. Spurs away, Brentford at home, Ipswich at home, on paper looks decent. My worry about Evanilson is whether or not he will definitely start. If I had to predict the Bournemouth lineup, it would have Evanilson as the number 9, but I don't know if it's a guarantee. So if I'm going to buy Evanilson, I would prefer to put that decision off until game week 29. It's not a guarantee that if he starts against Spurs, he definitely starts in 29, but it'd give you a bit more encouragement that he's straight back in the team and he's probably going to continue playing. That's what he did prior to his injury. So I think it's a nice move for the price, the fixtures. I'm just a little bit worried about his minutes this week, but if you want to take the risk, I really don't mind it. So what do we do with Ouattara? Now, I have spoken about this already this week, but the question keeps coming in, so I'll make the answer really quick. I would not buy him. There's way too much risk there, and if you've got him in your squad, I would probably hold on to him, hope that he starts against Spurs, and then if he does, that gives you encouragement that he's going to start in game week 29. Ideally, you've got such a good squad that you can bench him and play 7 other attackers instead, get another week's worth of information, then make a decision in 29. But even if you're in a position like me, where you've got to play him if you hold on to him, I think it's worth taking the risk. Because if he starts as the 9 or in one of the wide positions, and you think he's then going to start against Brentford at home and Ipswich at home, that's a really good value player. So I wouldn't make any rash decisions with him unless you've got the luxury of multiple transfers, like 3, 4 or 5 stacked up, nothing else to do. I think you hold him and you definitely don't buy. So is it worth a -4 for a stronger bench this week in case Trent or Salah get rested? Simple answer for me is no, because I think even if they're both on the bench, they'll probably both come on. And if you've got them in your squad, there's no way you're not going to start them. So taking a -4 just doesn't really make too much sense to me. Even if it was for free, I'm still not sure I would do it. I'd prefer to roll that transfer into game week 29. If you're in a position where the move you make is free and it makes your bench better, and that move's really good for 29 and it's not going to block you doing anything else, maybe I would do it, but I don't think many people are in that situation, and even then I would hesitate a little bit. So -4 to improve the bench for 2 players that are probably going to get some kind of minutes this weekend? No. So for my team, I think I'm pretty set this week apart from captaincy, which I'll talk about in a minute. Just to quickly run you through how the team is looking. Double up in defence on Everton, Pickford and Mykolenko against Wolves away. Not ideal, but the only other options for Mykolenko are Anderson against Brighton away or Greaves against Palace away. Neither of those 2 options are that good, so I'm going to go with the Everton double up. The other 2 players making up the back 3 are Gabriel against Man United away and Trent against Southampton at home. Definitely playing Gabriel. With Trent, there's a small chance he could get benched, but either way he's going to get minutes. I've got to start him. There is enough upside in a fixture like that. Palmer, Mbeumo, Salah, Nwaneri. Not really worried about any of them minutes-wise. I guess slightly with Salah, but not even a huge amount there. Ouattara is potentially a problem, but I've spoken about him a lot this week. I've got to play him, see what happens, then make a decision in game week 29. If possible, I really want to roll the transfer this week to leave my options open to how I get Haaland next week. Potentially, if Ouattara doesn't play in 28 and I have to sell him in 29, I just won't get Haaland. But I want to make those decisions next week. And then up front, Isak and Watkins, which looks pretty good. Again, a small chance that Isak is benched, but I've got to take the risk that he starts. I could be in a lot of trouble, right? If Trent, Ouattara, Isak all don't start, and Salah as well, let's just put him in the mix. I've got Cunha first sub who's suspended, and just Anderson and Greaves. It could be a mess, but also all 4 of those players could just start. So I don't want to make any panic decisions. And any move I make for Cunha could scupper my plans for next week. So if I was going to do my move this week, I'd probably do Cunha to Vissa. But for next week, that might mess up my plans to get Haaland. Am I likely to take a -8 next week anyway? Possibly. and buying Vissa this week for Cunha wouldn't necessarily stop that or increase the number of hits, but I just want to leave it open. Because next week, if I have to buy a forward, I probably wouldn't buy Vissa. I think he's fine to buy this week, but not one that I would go for next week. So I'm really going to try and roll the transfer. Captaincy, I have moved the armband to Palmer, mostly based on what Slot has said. I think it's quite likely Salah has his minutes reduced, and Palmer's a massive differential, and I'm 177k, so there's part of me that wants to take the risk, knowing full well that Palmer could blank again, and Salah could go and get a hat-trick, and then my season really is probably over. But also it could be a lot closer than that. I'm not even going to sit here for many more minutes and pretend to you that I'm definitely going to stick on Palmer, because by the deadline tomorrow I might just get too scared and go for Salah. But maybe it's just worth that risk. I'm so confident that Palmer starts and gets probably 85 plus minutes. I'm not as confident with Salah. And Palmer was very unlucky not to come away with more returns against Southampton. I just think the kind of stage he's at right now, where nothing seems to be going well for him, maybe it will just take a goal, and then the next goal will come, possibly an assist, and maybe that all comes in the same game. They're both good options this week. I don't agree with people that say that Salah is clearly the standout. I think if this was a normal game week with no Champions League, yes, Salah absolutely. I wouldn't even be sat here talking about it. But there is more risk about his minutes this week. So I'm on Palmer, hoping to roll the transfer. Let's see what happens on the deadline stream tomorrow. Join me for that at 9 AM UK time. Thanks for watching. Give it a like, hit subscribe. Make sure you join the Let's Talk FPL Premier League Pick'em League over on Sleeper. Link in the description below. And I'll catch you tomorrow.